Welcome to the September meeting of Warren County Finance Committee. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Evelyn and Dennis, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Have you distributed minutes of the joint meeting yet? Okay. Before we get into the action agenda, the county treasurer is asked to speak to the Finance Committee.
Good morning, everybody. Two things. One, a little bit of good news on the sales tax front. I don't know whether you've all checked your email this morning, but we sent out our usual state of the sales tax, and we're up 2% right now. So that's good. It keeps inching up a little bit. I'm getting more and more encouraged as we go. We were just having a little discussion. Every year I annually go through Lake George Village on Memorial Day afternoon, usually towards dinner time, just as a little side trip. Normally it's pretty quiet. This year it was packed. There were people everywhere. So I think we had a pretty good Memorial weekend, or Labor Day weekend, I'm sorry. On another note, last Friday, Paul, Rob Lynch, and myself had made a presentation basically to Standard & Poor's, which is for rate review for the up-and-coming bond that we're trying to do for the court expansion. After the review was done, the person from Standard & Poor's basically said that he felt that due to our presentation, due to the fact that the nursing home was under contract, and he was extremely impressed with the 5-year, multi-year plan that the county's doing, said that there was definitely upward pressure on the rate. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but at least it wasn't negative. Right now we're at AA minus, so if we can get that to move up a little bit, he said, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he said today or tomorrow he would have a decision on that. Wasn't that correct?
That sounded like it was going to their committee, yes.
Yeah. So I'm hoping within the next few days we should have some good news on that front. Obviously, the better that rate gets, the less we pay in interest. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that. And as far as the bond goes, it looks like on the 23rd of September is when we're going to be going to sale for those. So hopefully everything was all set. Questions?
We have a question, Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're 2% on the sales tax. We're 2% over what?
What we were last year, yes, at this time.
Where does that put us in relation to shift to where we budgeted? Because we had 2.5.
Well, this is the budget for this year was 1.5% over what was collected last year, correct, Paul?
No,
over what
it
was
was
budgeted last.
it was roughly 1.5 what we thought we were going to get. It fell short, if you recall, the sales tax by about $500,000.
Right.
And so if you go off the shorted number, I think that's where we got the 2.5.
Yeah, we need to get 2.5% this year to cover everything for this year and make up for last year.
That's to meet our budget, what we budgeted.
Right.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. So we're getting close. I mean, that percentage has been increasing all year. I mean, I was pretty nervous at the beginning of the year, but it looks like we're getting a little better. Anything else?
All righty. Thank you, Mike. We'll move right into the action agenda. Item 3.1, request for transfer of funds attached for committee approval. Evelyn? Dennis on the second. Ready for the question? All those in favor of action 3.1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 3.2, no request from the Treasurer's Office. Just heard that report. Item 3.3, referrals from the County Facilities Committee. 3A, request to increase capital project H350, court space expansion to include $16.5 million in funding from the serial bonds. Chair will entertain a motion. Bud, Dennis on the second. Any discussion?
You want to do both those?
Bud, do you want to do both A and B?
That's fine.
The motion is amended to include items 3A and 3B. Dennis, are you good on that second?
Yes, sir.
Discussion. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion to approve 3A and B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 4, referral from the Criminal Justice Committee. Request to amend the county budget in the amount of $2,522 to remove funds from distribution number 4 from the Office of Indigent Legal Services that should have been designated as the assigned counsel rather than the Public Defender's Office. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 4. Matt, Dennis on the second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 4 is carried. Referral from the Human Services Committee, request to amend the county budget in the amount of $13,484 to include federal funding received for the training of one dislocated worker under the Federal Trade Adjustment Act. Chair will entertain a motion. Evelyn on the motion, second. Fred Monroe on the second. Thank you, Fred. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 5 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 5 is carried. Referral from the Park Operations and Management Committee, request to authorize the appropriation of funds in the amount of $3,061.39 from Budget Code A691.07, Deferred Revenue Gaslight Village Parking Fees, to Budget Code A1625.470, Gaslight Village Property Contract to facilitate reimbursement to the Village of Lake George for certain expenses incurred in connection with the CRW Park Festival Commons. Chair will entertain a motion regarding item 6. Bill on the motion, Fred on the second. Any discussion on this? Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 6 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 6 is carried. Item 7, referral from the Public Safety Committee, Office of Emergency Services. 7A, request to amend the county budget in the amount of $48,000 to reflect the acceptance of FY 2015 State Homeland Security Grant Award. Chair will entertain a motion regarding 7A. Matt Sokol on the motion, Evelyn on the second. All those in favor? Opposed? Item 7A is carried. Item 7B, request for a transfer of funds in the amount of $4,200 from the contingent account to fund work to be performed by Clark Patterson Lead to provide a conceptual design and cost estimate for the proposed storage building to house Office of Emergency Services Vehicles and Equipment. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 7B to the floor. Jean Merlino on the motion, Evelyn Wood on the second. Any discussion? Dennis?
Where are they putting this building?
That's a good question. I know they were looking at the corner area that's parking, but I would hope that the proper siting of the building would be at least part and parcel of what this consulting fee would be for. Brian?
Thank you, Chairman. After consulting with Jeff Tennyson and the representative from Clark Patterson, we looked at about 6 different sites, and at that point in time, Jeff and everyone else felt that this grassy area that you see right out here, where you see that fire hydrant, that would be the place to put the building. So,
How big is it?
go ahead, Jeff.
I would just say that that is a potential spot. I don't know that we reached a conclusion on that. What I talked with Clark Patterson about regarding this concept design and cost was to assume a flat grade, come up with the building cost and conceptual design for everything from grade up. We can estimate site work costs without Clark Patterson's assistance and take a look at the areas that would be appropriate for it. One of the other, I think, key contenders would be the area where the cold storage building is over on Gurney Lane across from Westmount. It would require demo of a building. There would be additional costs with that. At least my thought and my guidance to Clark Patterson was come up with the concept of the building from grade up so that we understand the cost of that with the knowledge that site work would be additional. We can estimate that based on, if the county wants to move forward with construction of a building, we can work to look at actual locations. But honestly, my thought was let's see what the building's going to cost up front and see whether this is something the county's going to pursue now or just have on the back burner.
Is that what the 4,200 is gonna get us?
Yes, it would be.
So that concept would apply over there as well as here?
Yes, except the site work would be, excluded.
Demolition.
It would be the site work, and they're going to come up with a concept design, basically a shell of a building with a sample spec on the type of buildings that would serve the purposes, and working with Brian. Brian's mentioned some of the things that he wants to do in the future to upgrade the building, but we've got to kind of resolve what would be the first step in the building, and then, they'll give that budgetary estimate on what they believe would be involved to construct that building from grade up. And then in addition to that, once we explore some more sites and there's a resolution on a location, the site work would be additional to what Clark Patterson is coming up with.
I have several questions.
Keep going, doing good.
How big is it?
6,000 square feet.
Is it gonna have heat?
No. One bay will be isolated so that it can be partially heated to 50 degrees. Our hazmat trailer right now, we're paying rent to, the South Queensbury Fire Company to keep that trailer in their station because we have no place to keep it where it's warm. So if we put that building up, we would eliminate that cost and we would have the stuff here on site.
So how many bays are you getting?
5.
5. So one of the 5 is gonna be heated?
Partially, yes. No, we don't have to heat the whole building. The big thing is to get the equipment under cover, so that when we need it in a hurry, we're not out there shoveling snow and getting the ice off it and everything else. It's,
I understand that, that's a
Yep.
good point. Is there any water in this building, bathrooms?
no.
So what's the floor in the rest of the building? Is it concrete or gravel?
Well, it can be either. Our original design was gravel.
So we're looking at a metal building?
Yes.
Probably? Flat roof?
It'll have a pitched roof.
Okay.
I didn't bring diagrams with me. We have, some diagrams.
If memory serves me correct, I think a trooper pulled out behind one of those buildings and nailed me not too long ago. Aren't there 2 buildings there?
There's a salt shed and then there's the, old brick building.
So there are 2 buildings there.
Salt shed and, yes, the old building.
That'd be yes. Well, I don't like it out here. I don't think it fits in with the building.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. In my conversations with Jeff, and I think that the various sites and the pros and cons of each of the sites, and I think what you're going through, the fundamental question is, do we want to utilize space on the main campus for a garage? I think, needs to be part of this. In the end, the board's gonna have to make the decision, but it would seem to me that to just put a number out on a building with absolutely no idea, where we would even consider putting it, that's not what we want. There has to be some, siting analysis that needs to go on here. Some sites may not be appropriate for any of a number of reasons. Insufficient storm, insufficient sewer, insufficient water, insufficient whatever. Evelyn?
But I think what I'm hearing is that kind of is going on with Jeff looking at alternative sites, so I think we need to know how much this building is going to cost us, what it's gonna look like, to know if we can afford it and if we wanna do it. But at the same time, I think we should be looking at the alternative sites and what our options are. I think we could do both simultaneously and come back to the committee and then represent what their findings are and what their recommendations are, and from there, I think we'd have a better grasp of exactly what we're working with here and how we wanna proceed.
I agree. Dennis?
I would like to, I don't want it out here. I would like to, continue and get the estimates, but I would like to zero in on, that's a perfect site for it. I mean, you got 3 major roads in and out of there. The buildings that are there are unsightly, and if we could take them down and get a decent looking emergency storage building there, I think that would be great. So I would rather see this proposal zero in on that site, and then tell us, along with putting the building up, what's it gonna cost us to take the other 2 down, or whatever we're gonna do.
Jeff?
Yeah, I would just add as part of that discussion, the one building is cold storage for essentially old furniture. That we think we can do without. The salt shed is used, so if we take that down or we move it, reconstruct it, it's an older salt shed, it could be reconstructed, but it's gonna need to be replaced. Either adjacent to a new building or in a similar location. It's really kind of critical to all of our snow and ice operations.
Well, I
for
think
this
that's,
campus and for the area roads.
I think that's my point, is let's just zero in on where we would prefer to have it and answer all these questions rather than spend the money and get a building that you can move around like a Monopoly, but then you're gonna come right back with a cost. Okay, if we move over here, what's it gonna cost to take that building down? Let's find out now.
Right, I agree. Brian?
With all due respect, I appreciate your comments, and my concern is, over the last 4 years I've been doing this, and we started out with, well, there's no sense of getting a price on the building till we know where it goes. And then we looked at some spots, and then the request from this board was, okay, well, we need to have a price before we can figure out where it's gonna go. We need to know the price of the building. We've gone back and forth, and I would appreciate it at this point with Jeff's help, he's been very helpful, to at least answer that question. How much is it gonna cost? If it's gonna cost a substantial amount of money, then looking for a place for it doesn't matter. His plan to say, get a price on a flat piece of land, and then whatever when we pick a position, whatever we gotta do for site work. But at this point, this group has always asked me for, how much is the building gonna cost? And I think we're at a good point to do that.
Dennis?
You're working with the government, Brian, what do you expect?
I understand.
I'm gonna stick to my guns here. I agree with Brian. We probably have asked them, but now I'm asking them. I wanna zero in on that site over there. I think it's an ideal site unless somebody can think of something else. I don't want it here on the campus.
That was one of the ones that Jeff and I and the gentleman from Clark Patterson looked at.
Oh, good, then you gotta step up on it so you can, jump right into it.
We already had
I'd
laid
rather
it
put it
out,
over there.
so-
I wanna know what it's gonna cost to demo that brick building and then upgrade the salt shed. So, if they can throw that in that number and do that for us, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, Jeff?
The difficulty with giving you a price on demo in that building is we haven't done a hazard survey on it. That would be the first step for us, to have a hazard survey done. That has the biggest impact, on demo costs. So if the committee wants to proceed with that, then I can come back prior to the board meeting with another price for our hazard survey. On a building of that size, they normally run, $4,000 to $6,000 to go in and sample for asbestos. That
You
would be my
can-
next step to even
you-
guess at the cost.
I've done this with the, hotel in Lake George. You can get them to give you a preliminary on whether it has hazardous material with a simple walkthrough. I think they could at least do that, and then they just give us a ballpark. If it has asbestos in it, I assume there's no water in there, right, or heat or anything in that building? No, so there's no hot water lines that are insulated with asbestos or any of that. There's no stucco on it.
And that's the first thing they do when they give us an estimate to do a sampling
Right.
and give us a report, is they identify suspect material.
Well, I would like to have that included in this, and then if this is, overall cost is acceptable to the board, then we'll take the next step and have them go over and actually tell us whether there is asbestos in there.
Yeah,
or whatever.
I was one that made the motion on this because it was my intent that, to address the question, if and when we were to build such a building, what would be the cost? I think, Evelyn, Supervisor Wood put it out there, and, where would we put it? I think that not having an idea of not only of what it's gonna cost, but where we'd like to put it, stymies us. Now, it may be that we don't build it for the next year or so, but the point being that if and when we're in a position to want to consider it, we at least have an idea of, what we want to build, what it's going to cost, and where we're going to put it. And I think that was the thinking here. As far as just having a cost on a building, frankly, there are a lot of new construction out there. You could whip up a number pretty fast without having to bring on professional consultants here. I mean, I think we wanted something a little more than that. At least that was my intent. Supervisor Sieber?
Thank you, Chairman. My question is, and I'm in full support of this building and why you need it, and we've been batting this around for a long time now, longer than I've been on the board. But I guess my specific question is that in committee, it was referred to go to Jeff and to talk about the cost of this building, and like everyone's talking about, what is the final number here? But maybe someone can explain to me why we're not doing that in-house. Why it's costing us $4,600 would cost to build a building, when we have, you know, just very talented engineers. I know we're overworked and understaffed, but the truth is, we're just continuing to add to a cost, and we keep.
I think that was in the discussion Jeff provided to us in the committee meeting and later. His guys are buried. And to dig into this, am I correct, Jeff? Wasn't that
Yeah, it is a matter of capacity and capability. We did give one estimate, I think last year, on the initial concept that Brian had laid out with a building footprint, open building. But really this is to take to the next step, to have architects that have designed and constructed these in the past. I've never built a steel building, so I have engineers that certainly can work on this over time. We've given one estimate, and the project wasn't funded based on our estimate back then. But I think part of it too is nailing down in black and white exactly what's going to be included in this building, because there's a lot of variables and there's a lot of features that Brian is talking about adding in the future that have real impacts when you build the building to begin with. For instance, initially when we were told it was going to be open-sided, I talked with a steel building manufacturer and told them that, well, eventually we might want to enclose the sides. They said, well, that's a different structure. It was a completely different structure. So I think we've got to go through a deliberate process with an architect to nail down the specifications that are needed versus wanted, and nail down exactly what the building is going to be. My guys can do that work, but it takes them longer. They're highway engineers primarily, and we don't have experience with steel buildings. So I would recommend, for the cost of the project and to have good numbers, proceed with this on the building side of it. On the building location side of it, we haven't really discussed that in committee. I don't think public safety has, other than before when they were talking about putting it in the back corner, but that was before we added this whole court building on. So with the addition of the courts, that is prime real estate on the back corner that I don't think anyone recognizes now would be a good spot for this building, because that's going to be primary space for parking for the new courts. What I would recommend is, if the committee can advance this, we can get Clark Patterson working on that, and then let me come back to Facilities Committee with another kind of layout of here's some of the potential locations. We've also talked about locations at the airport. And I know Brian has his main offices here, and he'd prefer to have it close by, but we've got property at the airport that can be used near the fire training center. We've got other county parcels that I think we want to get an inventory from Lexi on, and just make sure that we haven't overlooked something. But if I can come back to committee with kind of a list of those, and then maybe the committee can narrow down, yes, proceed with this, and then we can come up with a plan.
Sounds like a plan. If I could kind of bring this to an end, I think any supervisor that has, just contact Jeff with whatever input that you want to bring to this. I'm sure this is going to be banged around here for a while, and usually site-type determinations are, unless people feel a strong imperative to, but...
I agree with Dennis.
Yes.
I think he's onto something when he said it's not, the main campus is not a good location for that building. Why couldn't we make that an option as part of the resolutions that it wouldn't be built on the main campus?
Well, I think unless there's an objection to that way of thinking here and today, I think that the message has been delivered. I hesitate wanting to do that, in that it's not something that other committee members have had an opportunity to deliberate on for a while, but I'll leave it to the committee. Bill?
Well, why limit your options, though? I mean, you should have a choice of location and type of building, and that's it, you know. Want to build it out here, want to build it over there, whatever, and the cost for each location.
Evelyn?
I'm good with that.
Okay. So I would say...
Are you talking about tabling this?
No, I think we should move forward with the work and the site analysis. I think, you know, I agree with you that I think this, the main campus is probably not the best location for this. I'd like to see the site analysis to cement my thinking in that regard, but And I also like the idea, should we move forward with it at some point in the future, and should we find ourselves in a financial position to be able to move forward, let's not forget, we have some other capital projects out there. This is not something, this is gonna have to take its place along with all the other financial demands that are placed on the county budget. So, my feeling is we should continue to move forward with the work that we're doing, but it's up to the committee and the pleasure of the board.
This is a lot more complicated issue than what it appears to be. We could spend the rest of the morning
Yes, we could.
prioritizing this project with other projects that we have. And truthfully, it's gonna be pretty far down. That alone would cause me to want to, rather than spread this project out, zero in on a parcel. And again, I think that's a parcel. I agree with Supervisor Sieber. I can see why she has so many letters to the editor. Paper every day. Take a break, give some of us a chance, will you? I've had a lot of dealings with metal buildings in my professional capacity. There are a ton of people out there that make them. You can just put your wish list down and send it out. You can have 6 quotes like that, including the Amish in Pennsylvania.
We've already investigated all those, Dennis, and I actually have 2 quotes right now in hand for exactly the building that we want, but
Then why are we going to the engineering company and spending
because
$4,200?
it needs to meet the requirements that have to be done here. I can provide the specifications that were given to us, and the idea with what we were doing was we were working, I've been forwarding all that information to Clark Patterson so that they can then take that and provide you with a legitimate cost of what it's gonna be. Erecting it with prevailing wage, Amish will not work with prevailing wage, I already went through that. Those kinds of things, we're at a point now where we know we can buy a building, we still need someone to erect it, and that person needs to meet the specifications of the state code and what the county needs, so. That's why we were heading towards the engineer.
This whole thing has gotten out of hand.
Chairman Garrity?
Yeah, I mean, you have a motion, you have a second on the floor, I asked the committee to please vote on this. This has gone back and forth. Have the committee vote, please.
I'll make a motion to table it.
We have a motion to table, is there a second to that motion? There being no second, the motion fails, Mr. Monroe?
Well, I think there are some legal requirements that you have to have an architecture engineer involved in public building over a certain amount of involved amount.
What you do, but we're just looking for numbers here, Fred. I mean, if they come in and tell us it's $400,000, off with his head. But if they come in at a reasonable number, then we can take that next step and get it certified, quantified, and...
Mr. Sokol? Call the question, please. Question's being called. We have a motion on the floor to approve $4,200 from the contingency fund to continue to move forward with the analysis on this building. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
1 nay. Motion is carried.
Nay.
Thank you.
Sound like wars.
Thank you, everyone.
I think I'm going home.
Stay tuned.
Anyway, I need to get reelected. I can't hang around.
8, referrals from the Public Works Committee, DPW. 8A, request to decrease capital project H277 Beach Road reconstruction in the amount of $318,240.15 to reconcile funding shares for final New York State DOT grant project costs and to transfer the surplus local match funds to the debt service fund. Chair will request a motion, a second to bring this to the floor for consideration. 8A, Evelyn?
A and B.
We have a motion, Evelyn, we have a motion, by Evelyn Wood to move A and B, second, Bill on the second. Jeff, just a quick explanation on this for the committee?
Obviously, the project's complete, and, we're doing 2 separate, requests, one to decrease and one to increase, just to make it clear for the record. They're separate grants, one is DOT and one is EFC, so DOT grant we can close out, and any of those remaining funds that were allocated to cover local match for that DOT grant goes back to the debt service, where we bonded local match for the project. And then the EFC, funds are coming back into the project. The EFC funds cover the long-term monitoring plan. As part of the, experimental feature of having the porous asphalt, we included some monitoring wells. They're gonna be sampling, over time, and we're working with Soil and Water to administer a grant, with some of the other environmental agencies in the Lake George Basin to kind of follow through on that.
All right, very good.
That's what the EFC wants.
Any questions? There being none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of approving 8A and B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. 8C, request to amend resolution number 169 of 2015 to remove Maureen Rambone from the authorization for just compensation and list only Louis J. Rambone as the sole property owner entitled to compensation. Note this request was not previously reviewed and approved by the Public Works Committee, so this did not go to Public Works. Chair will entertain a motion to bring 8C to the floor for discussion. Evelyn, Fred on the second, discussion. Jeff, what do we have here?
This is a permanent easement related to one of our federal aid bridge projects, the Blair Road, bridge project. What happened was we've already authorized just compensation through the board. You guys have already approved that. At the time, it had both Mr. and Mrs. Rambone listed as the just compensation, and then we found out after the fact that Mrs. Rambone is now deceased. So the quickest way to keep this moving forward is to amend that resolution for the just compensation to remove her name, and then we can get our right-of-way clearance and move the project forward this fall.
Thank you. We're ready for the question. All those in favor of item 8C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 8C is carried. Item 9, request from the Tourism Department. Gene will address us on this, so let's bring it to the floor. Request for a transfer of funds in the amount of $5,000 from budget code A 6417-110 tourism occupancy salaries regular to budget code A 6417-120 tourism occupancy salaries overtime to include additional overtime funding the tourism budget. Chair will entertain a motion to bring item 9 to the floor. Dennis on the motion, second. Fred Monroe on the second. Gene.
Just to let you know what this really was, tourism normally didn't have overtime. The way it was being run by the previous person, that if somebody worked 4 hours or 5 hours overtime in a week, she would give them that time off 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. We're running into a little bit of a problem with that right now because we're one person short. But I would like to, I apologize, I'm gonna table this until next month. Just a couple more things we wanna check on almost, to get it done right. So I request we table it until.
We have a motion to table. It takes precedence. A second by Mr. Dickinson. All in favor?
Aye.
We are tabled. Item 10, request items to be discussed by the county administrator. Journal report identifying transfers authorized by the county administrator. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The journal transfers are in your packet. Just a couple of big ones probably that might catch your eye. Under DPW, there was a transfer for the National Grid gas main line for the airport of $3,800, which I know you're familiar with. In connection with equipment for trucks, there was another $3,800. Those two caught my eye because they were both $3,800, and I just wanted to make sure of what they were for, and of course, perfectly appropriate for transfers. There was a $4,000 transfer down the page, you'll see, and that was for the install gates security system, which of course is normal things that need to be done at the airport. Down at the bottom, there's a big one, $10,000, and that was to cover unexpected kitchen equipment that failed. So here again, it was an appropriate transfer under the circumstances, was part of the, the repairs that need to be done.
Kitchen equipment where?
This is Office for the Aging.
Oh.
They have those meal sites, and they had
That's a lot.
Yeah, those things are expensive, when they go.
Stove.
The Public Health WIC program, there's some transfers there going on, and that's just to fully fund them between October and September. There's another big one under social services of $15,000, but this all went through committee, but in case, you saw it and you didn't recall, this was for the purchase of 3 radios for their cars to enhance security. They also needed $7,000 to cover postage through the end of the year. They spent more on postage than they budgeted. And then tourism had to, they've expanded their winter brochure, so they had a $6,989 transfer. All the rest you'll see are relatively small, just adjusting numbers between different lines in the budget. But I thought I'd flag those for you because, you know, I know when you look at these, you probably look at them the way I do, and your eyes light up when you see some of these big transfers. And
Are these all
make sure.
transfers from contingency, or?
No, these are within budget codes. That's what I'm allowed, pursuant to your resolution to approve, but I must report on them to you.
Right, just checking you.
Okay?
Alrighty.
Mr. Chairman, the second matter that you had mentioned is to revise the credit card policy for Warren County. You'll recall that earlier this year, I believe it was this year, hopefully if my memory serves me correct, we adopted a credit card policy, and as part of that adoption of a new credit card policy, it was also tied in with the county's movement from our current credit card system. We had gotten them through the Bank of America, and we moved through to the P-card system where we actually get credit for our purchases. They're a credit card still, but we're actually getting cash back. And we've been able to move everybody in the county pretty much to P-cards and eliminate the Bank of America charge card, except in a couple of places. One, we're winding down with some eBay stuff, and also I think there was something with the Balloon Festival, if I recall, that they had started under one card, so they're continuing. But the one here today is dealing with the sheriff. When we originally set this up, we had 2 cards being issued to the sheriff, and directly to the sheriff. But it turns out that the sheriff has 1 card that he keeps and 1 card that the undersheriff keeps. And the sheriff's card was originally for $5,000, and the undersheriff's was a $10,000 under Bank Americard. So and I guess the undersheriff does most of the transactions, but the sheriff has asked that if he gives up his Bank Americard, or the undersheriff does, could we just simply, and like I say, the sheriff's already got 1 P card, but he would like he would like to have a P card and the undersheriff a P card in the amount of $10,000. So therefore, each. So therefore, we would, I'm recommending that we do that and just amend the policy so that we allow that, and that also allows me to pull back the last bank card that he has over there.
Let's pull this to the floor for discussion purposes. Would you make the motion to bring it to the floor?
Yeah.
Mr. Dickinson, Ms. Wood on the second. All right, now we can have the discussion. Dennis?
Why does he need $10,000? What's he doing with it?
He had 5, he's just said he would like 10.
Not exactly what I was looking for.
I
mean,
Well, I
it's a
think
lot of money.
it gives them, no, I think they use it for travel, lodging expenses, whatever they may need on the road. They don't use it themselves personally a lot, they'll assign it out to their guys. Most of it goes, like I say, through the undersheriff, so there is a need on his part for the $10,000. The sheriff just said, you know, if he could make it 10, it'd make it easier over there, but, I mean, he didn't make a big deal out of it.
Did this go through your committee?
It did not come directly through my committee. I believe it went from the sheriff directly to the administrator, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, the credit cards are all financial matters, so this is just a matter of finance committee matter.
I really, I trust the sheriff, don't get me wrong. Seems like a pretty high number for credit card.
Our cards are generally issued around the 10,000
What's the
mark.
point? What's he doing with it? I mean, you go out in the day to send a officer out and go wherever, he's gonna spend $10,000?
Perhaps we could get a historical history of spending on the card.
We could certainly do that. Mike might be able to.
Maybe the county treasurer, Mike?
What happens a lot with these cards, and it happens even with the ones that are in the supervisor's office, the clerk's office, that there'll be multiple people using that card within a month, okay? And it's $10,000 maximum charge per month. So you may have 3 officers in training someplace and another couple officers someplace else. It doesn't happen often, but it seems like training always happens at the same time of year. So you've got guys going at the same month, different places, so that'll pile up real quick. Now, I don't know whether we need 5 or 10, I mean, I haven't looked at it that way, but that's usually because these are budgeted items anyway. In other words, you're using that card just as a matter to get a hotel or something else.
Right.
You already have money budgeted for because it has to be paid off at the time that the bill comes back to us. Otherwise, we have to pay interest, and we don't do that.
Mr. Dickinson?
I don't have a problem with this. I'm sure this is legitimate. What I would like to do is move on this resolution, and I would just like the sheriff's department to render whatever past history they have on the credit card. I'd be interested in seeing it.
So just as a sidebar, you'd like to see a report?
Yeah, just as a sidebar.
All right,
I'm
that's
not
fair
concerned
enough.
about-
Everyone happy with that? Okay. We ready for the question then? All those in favor of item 10B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 10B is carried. Finance Committee action is required on the following items approved by the Personnel Committee. Personnel agenda items 1B, 2, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B, 5A, and 5B. Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Taylor, bill on the second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of item 11 signify by saying aye. We have an item that was added to the Finance Committee agenda, would be the appointment of County Auditor Carla Steves at a salary of $51,000. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for discussion. Mr. Taylor, Mr. Dickinson, and Paul, do you want to just quickly?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, all background material and everything else that we needed to do this has come in. It came in, actually, some of the final pieces right between the two committee meetings, so that's what happened.
And I should have mentioned that, and I'd ask the motion and the second to consider this, that the motion should also include the backfilling of the part-time position that Ms. Steves is vacating. Are we good with that, Bud? Dennis?
Good.
All right. So that motion was amended to include backfilling of the part-time position in the auditor's office. Any further discussion? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is carried. Are there any other matters to come before the Finance Committee? Mr. Taylor?
We were at the college, the joint meeting of finance and college committee. In that meeting, we decided that we would meet again to discuss their request. Are we planning on scheduling that meeting shortly, or?
I have not been contacted. I don't know that the office has been contacted on another meeting. Mr. Sokol?
You have an addendum here that we had to address.
Just a moment. Just a moment.
You were doing very well.
You are correct. I was doing fine to that point. It was hidden underneath. Excuse my, but if Mr. Taylor, if it's all right, we'll come back to that discussion point as soon as we handle the second part that I did not see. Action agenda item 1, request items to be discussed by the county administrator. Discussion on new exemption from sales tax for certain sales of electricity under the solar power purchasing agreement. Chair will entertain a motion bring this to the floor for consideration. Mr. Dickinson, Mr. Sokol, Paul, what do we have here?
Mr. Chairman, this unfortunately came in on Friday, and as you know, we had a long weekend, and I had just tons of emails, and it wasn't until yesterday when I was sorting through everything that I saw this, and so I asked Amanda to get it out to the committee at the moment I saw it, but the state did not give us a lot of time here. The procedure is that if we want to do something, you have to introduce a local law in September and adopt it in October, which is why the urgency. I normally would never bring something to you on this short a notice. The other problem we're having, though, is that we're lacking some information. So with that as the starting point, let me just back up a moment and explain what this is all about. The state says in this email to us, and they gave us a bunch of documents, they said, hey, look, you can offer an exemption on the electricity, the sale of electricity produced by solar projects if they're pursuant to a certain type of an agreement, a purchase agreement, they call it. And so that's an option that the county has if they want to do that. So that would mean you wouldn't collect sales tax on that particular type of revenue, and obviously the intent is whether or not you feel that that's something that we should do. Would it help encourage solar or not? I don't know. That's something I guess that could be debated. What's also important, though, is Why, and that would be easy if that's all there was to it. The second piece makes it a little bit more complicated, and that is they're saying to us, hey, look, if you gave an exemption to sales tax for the installation and purchase of solar equipment back a few years ago, then this exemption would be automatic. So if you don't do anything, they're automatically going to also get this exemption. On the other hand, if you did not do that, it's the other way around, then nobody gets either exemption. And then they say, look, if you want to do these, basically they're hand in hand. So if you give one, they get both. If you don't want to give one, even if you have given it, you can take it away. But the catch is, everything has to be done by the October board meeting. The problem we're having right now is we have not been able to verify for sure whether or not we ever granted the first exemption. Martin's got a call this morning into the taxation department to see if what they have on files. We think we may have given an exemption, but we can't prove it out yet. So the issue for the board is this, and I hate to leave you with this, but I think the best that we could do this morning is maybe have this in your minds for consideration at the board meeting, and that is, if we did give the exemption, know that this exemption is just going to be automatic if you do nothing. On the other hand, if we did not give the exemption, then nothing's going to happen. There will be no exemptions at all. I guess that's
Welcome to the state of New York, is that?
That's
And then I guess the question is that once I know that, and you know that, then the question will be, do you want to repeal the exemption you gave, or if you didn't give an exemption, do you now want to give an exemption? I think hopefully
Everyone is smiling here. And just, so we received this, let me see if I get this straight, so we received this in early September.
Friday. This past Friday.
For, a decision that has to be made by
October. And you got to start it, unfortunately, in September.
Well,
What are we supposed to be doing?
It's all about
and we're not sure at this stage what the history on this is.
Yeah, and I guess
We're researching it,
to
but.
make it easy, though, the issue is, do you think you should give sales tax exemptions or not?
Mr. Monroe?
Just, I mean, I think that's the ultimate question. I mean, you could do something contingent, and, you know, we wanna grant the exemption, or we don't. If we wanna grant the exemption, we could pass something contingent on finding out, have we in effect already done it because of past actions, or if not, then we wanna take whatever steps necessary to get to that result.
Well, you're Mr. Sunshine, yeah? Did you pay taxes?
Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
Certainly don't have to make a decision today, Mr. Chairman.
I know we don't, you know, historically, I hesitate, I'm concerned about such things because it becomes so difficult to draw the line, what you provide exemptions for, what you don't provide exemptions for. Do you provide exemptions for, fossil fuel technology? Do you provide exemptions for, I don't know. I think it's a slippery slope. But, having said that, if it had been permitted some years back, then it would automatically be permitted. So that we're going to
find that out for you.
Going to
and
find
then
that
we'll send
out.
an email out to the board so you know.
I think at this stage, my recommendation to the committee would be, I think we're obliged, I hate to say it, but I think we're obliged to table it. I just don't think we have enough information. Mr. Dickinson?
The solar power, in its early days was, not being utilized, and they had a number of programs to get people to do it. We've all been involved a little bit, I think, with some of those programs. I think this is part of it. That if you went to solar power, you got this exemption. It's kind of a, icing on the cake. So I think that's where it came from. But the issues are, as you say, have we done it before? Are we setting a precedent here? And then where are we gonna go with that as we move forward? And the other question is, how much would that amount to in the course of a year?
I think we're just flying blind.
Nobody does. I mean,
Well,
you see an awful lot of homes in them.
What's that?
I move to
We have a motion to table. Do we have a second? Evelyn, thank you. All in favor of the tabling motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Taylor, we are now returned to you.
Awful nice of you to come back.
I remembered. Mr. Sokol woke me up.
I think we should schedule a meeting. I thought we left that meeting saying we were going to do that.
I think we, are open to another meeting, just, it's a question of arranging it, I think is where I would put it right now. Would you agree, Paul?
Well, Mr. Chairman, on the issue of the ACC, I think it would be very helpful if you would have that multi-year plan and all of that information on, that we want to present to you. We've had some difficulties getting that finished, for a couple of reasons. One is that the numbers have changed, in fact, just recently again, with the New York State retirement. They just dropped 7.5 down to 7 now. So that changes projections, but also, Joanne, who has been working on this with me, she's been out for a few days. I do anticipate that she will return on Thursday, and we should be in a position to wrap this up within just a matter of a few days. And then when you have that information, I think it will help you to be able to make decisions with regard to ACC.
So you wanna
I think right now, I think it's just stay tuned. I think we're on.
Who exactly are we meeting with? More than one committee, or?
It,
College.
would probably be a meeting, at least a joint meeting of the finance committees would be my guess, possibly including the tourism committees. I'm sorry, the ACC committee, excuse me, not tourism. Sorry, Rachel. Alrighty, any other business come before the board? There being none, motion to adjourn. Evelyn, Bill, on the second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Paul, I need to meet with you, Kevin, and Frank.